How can you use color to enhance the lighting in your worship experience? How can you evaluate your lighting fixture output? We're going to talk about all that and more on today's podcast. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Easter is fast approaching, and we have already been working extremely hard on custom projects for churches and ministries preparing for Easter this year. Our team has been cranking very, very hard this season. We've had the privilege over the years to produce some graphics and video content that are used all around the world at Easter. We also produce the main design and video content for folks like Church Marketing University, my friend Ryan Wakefield and Chris Abbott over there, who send that out, their main design, their video content for Easter, out to thousands of churches each year. We're honored to be the media producer making that content for them and others. And we can still possibly slide your custom Easter project in if you act fast. So you can submit your project right now at 1230.media/quote. That's 1230.media/quote. That submitted form will go directly to Steve Dirks on our team, who will gladly take care of you right away and get your project in production. Again, that's 1230.media/quote to get your project started. All right, today on the podcast, we are taking a deep dive into church lighting with two great experts on the subject, which I am not. I am not a lighting guy whatsoever, so you're going to hear me ask them a lot of surface-level questions as well as deep questions that are probably going to be over my head a lot of the times. I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to lighting, but these guys are incredible. Tom Stanziano is an experienced lighting designer in the entertainment industry. He specializes in theater and houses of worship, churches, in concerts, trade shows, cruise ships, and more. He has extensive knowledge of lighting for the church, and I'll be talking to Tom today about using color to enhance your lighting. I'll also have Stephen Ellison. Stephen has a BFA from North Carolina School of the Arts. He's worked for rental production shops in Philadelphia, New York, and Raleigh, North Carolina. And for the last 20 years, he's been designing lighting systems. He has a heart for the house of worship market. He's a believer, loves the church. He has taught at trade shows, both in the U.S. and internationally. He works at the Light Source. And I'll be talking with Stephen about evaluating your lighting fixture output. So I recorded both of these interviews in front of a live audience at the Church Facilities Expo. So you're going to hear that along with live questions from the studio audience there, the live audience there at CFX. So we'll dive right into my interviews with both of these guys right after this.
Last year when COVID hit, one of the things we recognized very quickly is that even though we had a beautiful auditorium that had really served our church well for many decades, we were way behind technologically. And so we reached out to Messenger, and they have come alongside us. They have helped us really begin to reach not just our community, but the world for Jesus. And even all this week, as they've come back in again to help install our LED boards, they're enabling us to minister to our church and our community. The center screen that they installed that drops during our COVID cautious service allows us to live stream from our West Campus, which again enables us to minister to those who are very concerned about the virus, or perhaps they work in a profession or work for an employer that requires them to take those extra steps to have lots of space. And so 50 to 100 people in a 1,000-seat auditorium, there's all kinds of room. And so Messenger has enabled us again to continue to minister to our church family, our local community, and literally around the world to get the good news of the gospel out.
Hey guys, we're at CFX. I'm hanging out with Tom Stanziano. Did I get it right?
You got it right.
Stanziano.
Stanziano.
Okay, all right. I was
Italiano.
Close. All right, man, you are doing a workshop on using color to enhance our worship experience, all about lighting in the worship experience. So kind of give me an overview of your workshop.
Well, I created this session. I'm a volunteer at my local church, and one Sunday morning, early in the morning, walk in, the band starts, really upbeat, high praise song, but the colors were blue, purple. You look at the projection screens, they're blue and purple. It really didn't go with the music. And I'm thinking to myself, this doesn't really get me excited. As we kind of transition into worship, the colors transition into more yellows and reds, but it's a worship song.
Right.
So it really got to me thinking about how we use color. And, as a young designer, I really never really thought about color. It was what looks cool. As I matured and I started working more in broadcast, that's when I started to think about using colors, because colors, how it affected the cameras, how to look on camera, looking at wardrobe, things of that nature, really had a major impact.
So you're currently a volunteer at Harborside Church near Tampa, right?
Correct.
And you were at Lakeside Church.
Lakewood Church.
Lakewood Church, in Houston. And so walk me through how you went from, and you talked about it a little bit, but walk me through how you went from volunteer and then got into more of helping them with lighting, helping them understand color, and then what you started to do and implement.
When I first started at Lakewood, I had no worship experience. I grew up Catholic. Most of my experience has been cruise ships, live entertainment, theater. So I kind of had to learn the whole worship aspect. And as I started to talk to other churches, there were no resources for the church.
On lighting and color.
On lighting. So I started going out to other churches and talking about lighting and how we did things at Lakewood. So I developed several different training classes, basic lighting 101, broadcast lighting, and then expanded upon it with using color.
So tell me how color and lighting affect storytelling. How can I tell a story using lighting?
Color is all around us. I mean, we use it in marketing, we use it in entertainment. It's a way to express emotion. And within our worship music, we feel that emotion. We want that excitement. Those early morning Sunday services, everybody's tired, everybody's been out the night before. Last thing we want to do is feel excited about going to church. Color helps enhance the music. It projects that energy. It helps the worship leaders. It helps the worship bands feel the energy in the room. It's very impactful. As I started to do research on color, it affects people differently. There's the emotional aspect of it, but there's also the psychological aspect. So within my session, I break it down into 3 different parts. You got the science, so helping us understand how we see color, the psychology, how we do emotion, how the emotions affect us. That way we can create our art.
So let's get practical here. Tell me what colors are best for what songs, what moments in a worship experience. Kind of give me some practical. I'm going to use orange and yellows for this, dark blues, purples for this. Walk me through that.
So color combinations that I like to use are very exciting, vibrant colors. So like high praise. You want yellows and reds and whites, very electrifying colors. For the worship set, you want it more subdued. Blues and lavenders and magentas, because you want the congregation to enter into that deeper sense of worship. And having lights really bright kind of takes away from utilizing, that worship experience.
So let's dive back into your 3 areas. Give me some more details on the science of color? What did your research teach you?
Well, I kind of got the science aspect from my son.
Okay.
He came home, and one of the subjects that they were learning was how we see. And I mean, it was basic fourth grade science, talking about rods and cones and how humans see different colors than animals. Animals see colors differently because it's all based on survival, hunting for food. So that's where the whole science aspect comes in.
How about the psychology?
The psychology is, how we react to different colors, the meaning of color. When you see blue, how does it make you feel? When you see red, what emotions are portrayed by those different colors?
How about the art?
It's utilizing those color combinations. One fascinating thing that I found about color in my research, that Isaac Newton was inspired by nature. He loved to see how rainbows were created, disappeared. So he actually created what we use today as the color wheel. Based on rainbows, he chose 7 basic colors, which are similar to the C major scale. So where normal musicians are playing the piano, he's playing color on the piano. And I happened to stumble upon that. A few years ago, I was taking guitar lessons. Not very good. And I was struggling quite a bit. And my teacher, he knew that I was in lighting. And he was like, okay, walk me through how you light a song. I said, okay. First thing I do is I sit down, I listen to the music, I try to visualize the emotion that's coming out of it. And then I see the colors, and that's how I create it. He's like, all right, great. I'm going to play a chord. Tell me what color you hear. And he would play a chord. And I was like, oh, that's blue. He's like, okay. Played another chord. I'm like, that's a little more magenta. And he kept going through the different chords, and it basically went through that whole C major scale. Now, this is before I found all the research on Isaac Newton. And he was like, this is how you need to learn how to play guitar. Don't worry about the notes. Don't worry about the chords. Feel the color.
So is it that? Is it more of a feel? If I go to program my lights, is it more of a feeling, or is it more of a science?
It's both. It's the feeling, it's the emotion, and it's visualizing, what I'm hearing.
So how much is both? So I'm going to have knowledge that these two colors don't go together. So how do am I feeling that also?
You're feeling that also, yes.
How you program on a Sunday.
So when you visualize the different color combinations, you can see what works and what doesn't work. And then if you look at the color wheel, you can see what color combinations are actually fit together.
So I have your notes, and I kind of want to walk through a couple of different colors and kind of walk me through, how that affects my life, some things in life that are those colors, that sort of thing.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk blue.
Yep.
So hit me with the things that you feel and do, and things about life that are blue.
So blue is that calming kind of feel, but it also portrays sadness.
I feel blue.
You feel blue?
I'm just giving you.
And there's,
blue Christmas.
there's a lot of symbolism with that. Right. I feel blue. When you look up car values, you look it up in a blue book. So there's a lot of symbolism that goes along with it as well.
What about green?
Green is the color of envy. It's also the color of life. It's a very natural color.
All right, give me a couple more. Give me red, purples.
Red is the color of passion. We see that in streetlights, stop signs. It's that aggressive color.
Okay. So I'm just kind of walking through your notes of how different companies use color. So kind of walk me through that. and how maybe we subconsciously interact with color in our day-to-day life.
So, I had mentioned earlier that we use a lot of color in our marketing. It's that visual effect. A lot of name brand companies will use those colors that we remember. So if I ask you, what are the colors that McDonald's uses?
Right, it's yellow and red.
Exactly. So we see a lot of companies utilizing those colors because we remember it.
Okay, so if I'm a lighting volunteer or if I'm a lighting guy on a church staff, give me some pointers of a Sunday morning worship experience. Using that color as a program, maybe how soon do I need to program for my Sunday? Kind of walk me through how you're doing a Sunday.
So whenever I program, I always make sure that I leave time to program.
Don't walk in on Sunday and do it.
Well, it depends on how good you are.
Okay.
I was never that good. We would get the worship set usually on a Tuesday. Wednesday, I would start listening to the songs, kind of getting a feel. And then Fridays were really the day that I would program. That way I'd get ready for Sunday. We would typically do between 5 and 6 songs. We would do 3 or 4 high praise songs, 3 or 4 worship songs. I always started the first song just full out, everything I got. Mm-hmm. That way it helps the congregation wake up, gets the band excited. Speaking with a lot of worship leaders, it is so difficult when they're up there on stage and they're giving it their all and the congregation is just sitting there just staring at them. Yeah. So having those colors helps push that energy to the congregation. The congregation feels it and throws it back to the stage. That's why every once in a while, you'll hear the worship leaders go, okay, one more time.
Right.
And they go back into it. That's that energy that's created in the room.
Yeah. All right, I got one last question for you. We'll land on this. And you guys who are in here, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask after this one. Do I have to be super knowledgeable about lighting to be a volunteer? Can a lot of it be learned? You were a volunteer. You weren't on a church staff. You learned it. How much of it is skill and how much of it is willingness to learn?
A lot of it is just passion for knowledge. It could be learned, absolutely. There is a little bit of talent. You got to have a little bit of rhythm, mm-hmm. which I learned. But a lot of it is just feeling that emotion, that comes with the music.
Do you have a favorite lighting board?
I have several favorite. For me, my favorite is the one that's going to do the job.
There you go. There you go.
I always equate a lighting console to a comfortable pair of shoes. Everybody's different. Everyone wears a different pair of shoes. It's a comfort fit.
As long as I get there. Awesome. You guys have any questions on this topic? Yeah. I'm going to repeat your question for the camera here in a second, okay?
to leadership folks in the church. And when you introduce color, it's like, what's the purpose of this? Why are we doing this? I mean, why don't we just use fluorescent lights and color? What would you say in terms of the best thing to provide advice?
That's a great question, man. I'm going to repeat it for the podcast here. The question is, how do I share with my leadership the importance of pouring energy and intentionality into lighting, whether that's color, spending money on gear, that sort of thing? Did I get that correct? All right. You want to answer that, Tom?
Sure. One thing that I always look at is the purpose. What is the purpose of your ministry? Is it broadcast? Is it the local congregation? Once you understand what the purpose is, then it's really easy to take it to the next level. We would have production meetings every week after we had our service, and we would basically deconstruct our service. We would have the pastor, we would have the executive director, we would have the media people. We would have everyone involved, and we would sit in the room and we would go through the entire service. What worked, what didn't work. That way we improved. I know there's a lot of ministries that once they do the service, they're done. They never look at it. They don't look, to see how they can get better. The introduction of color really brings out the emotion, and it takes that worship to the next level. If you think about when you walk into a classroom, how bright it is, how does that make you feel? It doesn't really make you feel like any kind of worship. So when you start to create that atmosphere, the congregation will enter into a deeper sense of worship.
So I'm going to repeat part of his question too, because I would be really interested in your response. Say if a pastor comes back and says, well, fluorescent lights are fine. I mean, what we got is fine. There's no reason to spend any money on anything to enhance it. We don't need to buy additional cans, additional smart lighting, anything like that. What we got is fine. How would you respond to that?
Again, I think it goes back to the purpose. If it's just the pastor on the platform speaking and addressing the congregation, that could be fine. Once you start to introduce the production value, you want that quality to be as good as you can. There's a lot of ministries that will say, I will never go on TV, until that local station calls and says, hey, I just happen to have a slot on Sunday morning. Would you like it? There's a lot of ministries that
you could reach thousands and millions of homes with the gospel.
Most of those churches are not TV ready, and they end up going on TV. Doesn't look very good. So when people are sitting at home and they're flipping channels and they get to that production, that service, they may go right by because it doesn't look good. It's the production quality that's going to grab the attention of the viewer, but then it's the pastor's message that's going to keep them there for the next 28 minutes.
Right. So I think you bring up a good point, and that's another way to answer that is we want to enhance your message and make it more effective so that people can hear about Jesus and grow closer with him. And when they can have a better experience, your message will be not only heard, but digested a lot better if the experience is better. Does that help answer you? Awesome. You guys have any questions as we end up?
Yeah. Do you use lighting throughout the entire service, or is there a point where you say, okay, enough light is going to be bright, like maybe for a sermon or offering or anything like that? Is there a point where you stop or you speak on it?
Good. The question is, do I use lighting throughout my entire worship experience, or do I just no light, maybe just during the sermon, just a fluorescent? Do I use it throughout the entire experience?
So for me, it starts the moment the congregation walks into the room. The room has to be set with that inviting environment. And then as you go through your service, there should be some transition. So it should get really bright. And then during worship, become a lot dimmer. That way you can kind of feel that transition. And then when it comes time for the message, it should get brighter again. So there should be some ebbs and flows. Just like when we're telling a story. You've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it should all flow seamlessly.
Should I bring up the fluorescents during the sermon and just leave them on, or should I use the lighting and dim it?
If that's the only lighting that you have, that's what you have to go with. For me, whenever I'm designing a lighting system, I will have fluorescents in there, but I classify those as cleaning lights. Those are not my production lights. If you have the availability to do other kind of production lights to set the room, that's better. If all you have is fluorescent lights, there are ways to color tune them to make it a little bit more inviting.
So I'm going to take one thing that you said a step further. You were mentioning as soon as people walk in the room. I would say before that even, you want to make sure that your room is set before the doors open. Don't let them walk in when your environment's not set. Would you agree
Absolutely.
with that?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Because a lot of times people remember the first thing they see and the last thing they see. So if they walk in and that room's not set, they're going to remember that. Same with, when they're leaving. So when service is over, never bring up the lights to full, right away, because that's what they're going to remember.
Good point. Yeah, man.
So, would you recommend keeping the lights low during this sermon? The thing we want to do is, if the lights are low, people can't read their text.
Okay. Would you recommend that the lights are low during the sermon, or bring them up during the sermon so that people can read their notes?
It's all style based. I like to keep them bright for the fact that they want to read their notes. Also, pastors want to see the reactions. They want to see people's faces.
Yep.
So that's another reason why you want to keep the lights on.
Yep. Yeah, man.
How do you navigate conversations like the importance of making adjustments in the room to accommodate light, to avoid a lot of reflections and unnecessary things that detract from good production light?
Great question. So I will repeat this for us. How do I navigate conversations of making aesthetic adjustments in the room that would affect lighting? I assume you mean like covering up the windows, or moving some building things around to make sure that the lighting works for you. Great question, man.
That is a good question. For me, it's the purpose. Are you a broadcast ministry? If you're a broadcast ministry, then you want to look at everything through the camera. You want to look at every camera angle, and you want to see all those different effects. My home church, we're in a gymatorium. And when we started, we had curtains blocking the window, big, huge window behind the stage. Pastor decided that, we want to open up those curtains. We want to see the outside. But there was a lot of reflection that came in. So Sunday morning, we would have bright sunlight coming in. So one of the things that we did was we had to treat the windows. So there's actually a gel that you can put over the windows that will still let the light come in, but it knocks it down a couple of steps. It's called neutral density, that will help knock the light down so it's not so glaring. But again, you got to look at everything through the eyes of the camera if you're a broadcast ministry. If you're not a broadcast ministry, you want to try to enhance the room. And it's difficult depending on the situation that you're in. I do a lot of designs for churches that are in strip malls, old movie theaters. So you want to be able to, project patterns or gobos on the walls just to enhance it. I always say that I'm a little ADD. So whenever I go and I see a show, I look at everything. I'm looking around, I'm looking at the ceiling, I'm looking at the lights, I'm looking at, how everything affects me. So when I design, I put little elements in there for people like me to look at, but still bringing it back to the focus.
Good. All right, how can people follow you? And we'll stick around a few minutes for you guys too. How can people follow you and keep up with what you're doing at Harborside?
Oh, that's a good question. Never really thought about it. I do have a website. I have to think about it. worshipld.com. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I do parties, bar mitzvahs.
Awesome. Thanks for the time, Tom. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll stick around, guys, if you guys want to chat. Hey guys, I'm hanging out with my friend Christian Jones. Christian is one of our incredible video producers on the team. Christian, what's going on, man?
Not much. Just having a good time down here in Charleston, South Carolina.
That's right, man. So give me your why. So I want to know why you're on the team. Why do you love serving the church through your work as one of our video producers?
Yeah, so I worked in, before I jumped in on the 1230 team, I worked in marketing for, a little over 7 years. And I mean, I loved every aspect of it. Have done video for, most of my life. And I just really wanted to, keep doing the work I loved. But at the end of the day, I wanted to have a real solid purpose behind it. So whenever I got the opportunity to jump on the team with 1230, I jumped on it right away, and I've loved every moment of it because I get to do what I love and for the church. So, you can't beat that.
Well, man, I love your heart. I love your heart for the team, for the church, and just love all the projects that you've gotten to work on. And man, ultimately, like I just said, love your heart for Jesus and love your heart for the church. Really appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Carl Barnhill from the Making Sunday Happen podcast. I'm here with Stephen Ellison from the Light Source in Charlotte. Stephen, tell me a little bit about what you do at the Light Source and some of your background.
Well, at the Light Source, I handle technical sales questions. So if you don't know how to use our hardware for rigging, I help you out. If you don't know how to deal with our lights, or you need help understanding which lights to put where, I can help you out and get you going. I also then come to the trade shows and meet with people here at the trade show. My background goes into getting a theater degree many years ago. And I have worked in the theater industry, working for different integrators, rental companies, that sort of thing. Been a systems lighting designer, systems engineer, rigger. I am ETCP certified in theater rigging and as an electrician. If you know what ETCP is, that's the Entertainment Technician Certification Program. Pretty complex. But basically, now I just relax and answer a lot of technical questions and try and help people understand.
So how have you seen lighting change over the years? You've been in the industry quite a long time, so tell me some of the big changes that have happened over the last, let's say, 15 years or so.
I would say the last 15 years, the biggest change has been the light source itself. We have gone from either incandescent as the main source of most of our ellipsoidal and par lamps, and that has shifted way over into LED. There were a few other options that sort of didn't make it. There was a plasma lamp for a while, didn't really make it. The LED has taken over and really dominated the market to that point.
Do you like that change? Do you prefer a more can light? Do you mind the more digital smart lighting? Where do you stand?
Oh, I like the digital lighting. It is so much more versatile, gives us so much more options, and that's basically what I'm trying to get people to understand, is that the metrics, the things we're looking at to evaluate a light has changed, and this notion that we can compare it to an incandescent lamp is just old school.
Okay, so walk me through that. And I'm going to be honest here, this is a weak point. I'm not a lighter. I know enough to be dangerous, but you are light years, pun intended, beyond to me in this area. So I'm just going to be curious and ask you just a bunch of questions. So start me out with that. Let's evaluate light sources. Give me that from kind of a beginner level and kind of walk me through that a little bit.
Okay, well, let's just start with the title of this. Is they got it wrong. It's not CMI, it's CRI.
Okay.
Versus TM30. CRI, let's just deal with the C and the R, color rendering. An easy way to understand that, and I thought about it, this just suddenly came to me like last week. Years ago, women would buy a makeup mirror, and it would have 2 vertical strips to light up the face. And you could change the color of those strips to either an amber, a white, or a blue. So if you put in the amber strips, you were putting on your makeup for the nighttime. If you put in the blue, that represented more daylight color temperature, and you wanted to see what that looked like. So here you're looking in the mirror for the color and getting the rendering of that color correct for your light that you're going into. Well, that's what we're trying to evaluate with our fixtures, the color rendering. How well does it work with, because another good example is if I've got a play going on stage and I've got an actress and she walks in and her dress just looks drab, very drab. Yet I subtly introduce red color into the mix and her dress suddenly pops at a certain point, a very dramatic moment in the play. Now I have changed the color rendering from drab to bright red. So that is, the subject we're trying to deal with is that what colors do I need to emphasize in whatever environment I'm trying to light? So color rendering. Now, the problem that I'm running into is people are using a 1932 method of evaluating a light source. Color rendering index, they call it CRI. It is a single number factor, and it is based on using originally 8 pastel shades, and they would turn on the reference light, and then they would turn on the light they were testing to compare the two. And the reference was 100, and then everything below that was obviously not as good at rendering colors. But again, we're only looking at these 8 colors, which they eventually added. They said, well, this is not, over the years they scientifically looked at it. They added up to 15 colors, and red being one of the primary colors they added. But if you look at the spectrum of an incandescent lamp, it starts out real low on the blue side, and there's almost no blue. And it goes up and peaks really high in the red. So it renders red really good. It renders blue not so good. But there's no way for you to tell that from the number 82 or 85 or 90. People say, well, it's got to be at least better than 90. Well, that means it renders red real good. Well, what if I don't have a lot of red in my church? What if I don't need that? Mm-hmm. What do I want to do then? How do I work with it? How can I tell whether this light is better than that light? And so that's where CRI just is old school. It needs to be stopped being used.
Okay, so tell me about the TM30. Why should
So TM30, and it usually has a dash, and there was 2018, now there's 2020. So they're updating it on a regular basis. The organization IES is the one handling that. So that's and I can never remember what it stands for. I'm bad with acronyms. But IES is the lighting company, the really fancy guys who do all the research. So TM30 is different. It uses 99 colors to start with. It then compares that and gives you 2 definite numbers. One is the fidelity and one is the gamut. Gamut refers to how big an area of color does it cover. I guess that's a good way to put it. It's, I can reach this color to that color to that color. Mm. Well, different fixtures are limited in how much they cover. Then it also provides you with a graph which shows you the reference fixture, and then it shows you the fixture you're comparing, and it shows you where you're off. So it's a color graph in a circle that shows you the shift, shows you which direction the shift is going. And that makes a big difference, because now I can see what is happening. It gives me more data to work with than that single number, which doesn't tell me which direction the problem is.
So a lot more options, a lot more to work with, a lot more information.
A lot more information.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the lighting guy on Sunday, let's talk about programming and things like that. Bring me into that world. How does this matter for that guy?
Well, this makes no difference to that guy. What makes a difference is if I can take that light and now adjust what it can color render. That's where the incandescent lamp it was it. I mean, a good example is it's got no blue. Well, as doing rock and roll concerts, you wanted this heavy Congo blue. If you ever heard of Congo blue, gels were put in front of incandescent lamps, and you rated the gel by how much transmission. Meaning, if it's red and it's giving you 80% transmission, that's most of the light in the red, but it had a lot of red to begin with. Congo blue was about 8%, meaning it was only 8% of blue light in that coming out of that filament. The rest of it was being absorbed by the filter. That's why the blue filter burn up so quick. Well, now, if I take a source, an LED source, that has white LEDs, red LEDs, green LEDs, blue LEDs, some have amber LEDs, some have lime green. With those colors available, now I can mix, and this is where this makes a difference to the guy mixing the board. I can say, well, for this set, or I'm working with that background, which is coming off of the LED wall, because LED walls put out a lot of light. But I can look at the color that we're going to be using for all the graphics. What is the background looking like? I can now tune my light to put out more of that color and less of the other, because I can make a blend. So now I've got the ability to say, well, generically, the white LEDs give me this look. But the fact that I've got all the other colors, now I can shift. I can play with what will be the CRI index. I can make it whatever I want. I can add a lot of red and suddenly I'm making 100. But the spectrum doesn't look right.
Gotcha. So you're doing a workshop tomorrow.
More in depth, yeah.
On this topic. What are some other things from that workshop that you want people to know that you're going to communicate?
I will actually have the graphs and the information, the data to show what does it look like. What do these spectrums look like, so we can review the spectrum and show them where the differences are and what it is. Because that's why I'm saying it helps when you're evaluating fixtures to know what it can do. Well, I can say the white LEDs will give me this TM30 data. But if I've got colors available, then I could tune it. One of the big fun things with LEDs is they want tunable white. Well, tunable white would mean I can take a 2700K LED, maybe 3500 and a 6000, and blend them together. Well, I'd actually rather start with a 3000K LED in white and have red, green, and blue. Mm-hmm. Because then I can really not only play with the color temperature, but I can play with the color rendering. And the color rendering, that's the idea, is like, I've got a nice red shirt. Well, I want that to pop, then I'm going to want to have enough red coming out of that LED.
Right.
And we're talking subtle pastels, possibly. We're not talking necessarily intense color to change all that. Whereas it can be fun with the intense colors. That's a whole nother fun part, but that's a whole nother thing about design.
So what are some things that you've picked up over the years that you would tell a young lighting guy getting into this field? Or maybe yourself years ago?
Yeah, years ago. Years ago, they didn't have what we've got. It's that you're going... it used to be very simple. You plugged your incandescent lamp into a dimmer, and you had control over that dimmer, and you could only control intensity. Now, everything is going to be multi-channel. You really do need to learn networking, because you're going to network your lighting system, because it's going to be that much more complex. Where 512 channels of DMX sounded like massive. 4 dimmer racks was, 2 dimmer racks is 192 dimmers, and it's like, that's a lot. Some theaters would have maybe 4 or 8. That's still way below, and there was nothing else using DMX. Yeah. Until you got the color scrollers, and then they're only using 1 channel. So it's like, now you've got media servers using up 256 channels. An LED, if it's got white, red, green, blue, lime, amber, that's 6 channels. Well, they might add another couple channels because they're going to give you automatic choices of color. So it's like a virtual color wheel. Yeah. I can use 10 channels. Yeah. So you really need to learn that. As a lighting guy, needs to understand how to program, how to use these new, and the consoles are much more complex.
Yeah. Good. Well, man, as we wrap up, tell us how people can get in touch with you. How can we learn more about what you have to share?
Well, I'm available at The Light Source. It's pretty simple. It's SRE for my name, SRE at thelightsource.com.
Awesome.
Email me.
Awesome. Any questions from you guys? Okay. Stephen, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Well, that is it for us this week. Next week, I'll be chatting with the president of AE Global Media. My friend Donnie Hawk will be in the house. AE Global Media is a world leader in audio, video, acoustic, and lighting technology applications. They design and build technology systems for major facilities such as churches, entertainment, education, and sporting events. They design, develop, and produce events including concerts, touring, seminars, sports, corporate, and product launch events, and more. They do it all. They are an incredible force in the church space as well. Donnie and I see each other at conferences all the time. I'll be talking with Donnie all about improving the impact of the church building for worship, how you can have AVL systems that really make an impact and help people experience Jesus. That's next week on the show. Don't miss it. We'll go out there and create some incredible experiences this week at your church. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit makingsundayhappen.com.